for joining the Savvy Ladies Wednesday Wisdom webinar. I'm Maggie Montemuro, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Savvy Ladies. Here's a quick reminder that if you have any questions during the webinar, you can type them into the chat box or email info@savvyladies.org. Today's presenter is Jennifer Friedlin, founder of Iris 7 Marketing, a strategic marketing and communications consultancy serving small businesses and nonprofit organizations. Jennifer has previous experience as a reporter and spent 5 years in Israel covering business and technology. Throughout her career, colleagues turned to her for communications help. When she realized these colleagues at businesses and nonprofits needed a trusted partner to help with their messaging, Iris 7 Marketing was created. I want to thank you for being with us today, Jennifer, and let's get started.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you, Savvy Ladies, for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks so much for everyone who's on the call. Today we're going to be speaking about content for startups and growing businesses. The goal here is to figure out what small businesses need to say, where they need to say it, and then how they need to connect the pieces of their messaging process to create a content system that will help them to build their base of customers and support. Just getting used to the prompts here. As you may have heard, there's a saying, content is king. And that's because there's so much that you can achieve with a content strategy. You can use a content strategy to help you generate sales, which is where you get your return on investment in developing content. It can help you increase your relevance, meaning that you are seen as being a player in your space. It will certainly increase your exposure. It can be used to increase your reputation as an expert. And most importantly, for small businesses, it really helps you with your connections with your people. So when you think about developing a content strategy, especially if you're a small business, you want to think about your audience. And the nice thing about us being a small business is you often really know your audience quite well. If you're a Nike or a big consumer brand that's out there, you're talking to lots and lots of people. But if you're a small business getting started, you have a more intimate community, and you can really use all of the tools of the content system to generate those relationships and build connections in a very personal way. The first thing to do when you're thinking about your content strategy is to think about how you're going to lay the foundation. And this means that what you really want to determine is who is your target audience, where do you fit into the marketplace vis-a-vis your competition, and what problem do you uniquely solve for your clients? And the more that you can really dig in and answer these questions, the better off you will be in determining your content strategy. And I will use an example that I have to demonstrate this. So one of my clients is called Reclaim a Space. And what Reclaim a Space does is they help people who live in urban settings. For those of you who are urban dwellers, you may empathize with this or identify with it. What Reclaim a Space does is help people maximize their space. So they do built-in furniture and wall niches, those sorts of things that really help people take advantage of every last millimeter of space in their home. And when Reclaim a Space was starting out, they're really launching this summer, but they came to me before they even built their website and really wanted to get a better sense of their ideal client, their positioning, and what we call their unique value proposition, what really made them unique in the marketplace. And so what we did is we dug in and we started to think about who their ideal client was. And these are all of the points, as you see on the screen, that they came up with. Their ideal client is a woman, she's around 40, she's a mom, lives in the city, and so on and so on. And the reason why this is so important is because you want to know who you're speaking to, who you are selling to. If you, and this we'll get into this later, but for instance, Reclaim a Space really felt that their ideal client was on Pinterest. So when you're thinking about content, if you know where your ideal client hangs out, you will know where you need to be as well. They thought a lot about the types of magazines and blogs that they were reading. Again, that helps you determine where to go when you want to launch a bit of a PR strategy, or where you might decide to get your blog promoted. So these are all really important things for the sales process in general and for content strategy in particular. In addition, we worked with them to figure out their positioning. There are many companies in the space that are looking to help people improve their home, make it more beautiful, get a better closet, those kinds of things. And so what we did is we looked at the top competitors in their space. And this is just a short and condensed list. The real list that we generated for them had about 13 or so players, including Google searches. So we looked into what are people Googling, what comes up when we do a Google search for, space constrained apartment living, or, what are people looking for? And we tried to play around with a bunch of terms because that is a competitor. We want Reclaim a Space to come up on that list. We want to know what people are Googling and how then we can do that for things like SEO, which is a whole other topic I won't get into. And so these were some of the competitors that came up. And one that I'll speak about in a minute is Transform. Transform is a company that works within the available space. So they don't do wall niches and they don't do beds, but they were sort of in line with the ideal client, we felt, and with the price point as well. But what we did was then we came up with Reclaim a Space's unique value proposition. And so what we did was, this is what it is, that Reclaim a Space's unique value proposition is that for city dwellers who want to stay in their homes but feel space constrained, Reclaim a Space offers furniture and storage solutions that will help you maximize every square inch of your home. Unlike Transform, Reclaim a Space's designers look at all of the available space from floor to ceiling and even behind the walls, and can tailor existing furniture or customized solutions for any room in your house. So we had a really clear idea of what they were doing, and that is how we also got to the tagline of every square foot counts. When we took all these three things, the ideal client, the positioning, and the UVP, or unique value proposition, into account, we realized exactly who we were talking to and exactly what their pain point was, and we created a tagline that we felt really spoke exactly to that client. So how does this affect content strategy? Well, now that we know who we're talking to and what we need to talk about, we can figure out what we want to write about. And so we knew that Reclaim a Space is selling space solutions for urban dwellers. They're selling it to families, and women are the buyers that want to live in a city but feel squeezed. Their audience cares about having a nice home and their time. What is their expertise refers to Reclaim a Space, which is custom furniture, innovative space solutions, ways to manipulate IKEA furniture to solve design issues. And other topics that they could write about were things like DIY hacks, new products, handyman tips, solutions to common homeowner problems. So now we have a sense of the type of content that they could be writing and putting out to the world that would speak directly to their ideal client. So the question for all of you is, what are you selling? To whom are you selling it? What does your audience care about? What are you an expert on? And what do you like to write about? Because a content strategy requires a lot of writing. So, you really need to think about what are the types of things that you enjoy writing about and how can you tie that in. And then the thing to determine are your content channels. There are many of them. You'll have your website blog, your newsletter, social media, podcasts, videos, advertising is a content channel, and traditional public relations. And what you're going to need to do is take a good accounting of your resources, meaning your time and your money. And how are you going to select the right channels so that you're reaching the right people? And don't spread yourself too thin. find the best places for you to be to reach your ideal client and go there. If your ideal client is a woman who is between the ages of 40 and 55, you probably don't need to be on Snapchat. But if your ideal client is a millennial, you may very well decide that Snapchat is the best avenue. So you really want to think about this because this is going to take time and small businesses are resources constrained. So you need to be very wise in making some of these decisions. And you have many choices to pick from, right? And here's a little chart that helps you see how you can think about these channels. You can really dig into who is on them, how many people can you potentially reach, and what is it you're looking to do. And again, you're not looking to reach every person on these channels. You are looking to find your people in these channels. So really consider the channels and think about what are the best avenues for you. And again, don't spread yourselves too thin. So in terms of setting up your system, what does content flow look like? You might write a blog and then include it in your newsletter. You can push it out through your social media channels. You might create a video around it. You might advertise you might turn some of your, let's say you're on Facebook and you've got a post that's doing extraordinarily well. Well, you can use that data to turn it into an ad that you can place on Facebook. And then you can also send it to other bloggers and influencers. So you want to think about the wheels and how each wheel is going to turn to make the whole system work in a very smooth way. And so one of the other things that you're going to want to think about here are calls to action. When you put your blog post, for example, in your newsletter, what do you then want people to do? Do you want them to go to your website? Do you want them to buy something from you? Make sure that you are putting that call to action then in the newsletter. So you might have, if you're putting out a product, a food product, let's say, and you've got a newsletter announcing a new flavor of your jam. Well, now you want people to buy it. So make sure somewhere in that blog post you also have a button that says, click to buy now, or something to that effect. And this is an example of how I think about my content. I do a blog, a monthly blog that is a Q&A with a small business owner. The idea being that small business owners have lots of ideas for other small business owners. So I put it on my website. Then I have a newsletter that I use. The platform I use is MailChimp. I put it out in a newsletter, an abbreviated version, just the intro with a read more button because I want people to come to my website and hopefully read more. I promote that blog post in Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter. And then I send the post back to the person who I interviewed with some instructions for what they can do to further promote the blog post. I might turn the blog post into a Facebook ad to further promote it, and I'll put a little bit of money behind that. And then again, with that ad, I might promote that ad on LinkedIn, on Twitter, letting people know what's going on. And I will also use content from the blog for ongoing social media. So there might be, a Q&A could have lots of little nuggets and tidbits that I will then pull out and repurpose for further posts. So really trying to get the most out of your content is important because, again, having a content strategy really requires a lot of material. So you always want to think about how to maximize that material. And when you're determining your content, you're going to want to remember to figure out what your voice is, consider your audience's needs and desires, and to stay on message. In addition, you are going to need things like visuals. How are you going to create an attractive post or an attractive visual to go with your post? One thing I suggest is Canva. If you don't know what Canva is, it's a great and very inexpensive, often free graphic design platform where you can create really attractive posts and you can select all of the right colors and everything. So you can check that out. If you're doing a lot of photos, you can find some really nice photo tips on a blog called Pinch of Yum. And you'll also likely want a platform for scheduling your posts so that you can kind of schedule a lot of posts, and you're not sitting there online every day trying to post each post. And Hootsuite is a good platform. There's also TweetDeck and others. So you should look into that and see what feels comfortable with you. And then what you're going to want to do is create a plan and a calendar, and you're really going to want to stick to it. When are you going to post? What are you going to post? Which platforms are you posting to? How will you know what's working and what's not? And this is a really important point because, you know, you want to go with the winners and you want to kind of drop the duds, and it's okay to have a dud. In social media, nothing really lives long. And this is about really finding your community and what's resonating with them. So don't be afraid to try things. Sometimes the thing you don't think is going to get a lot of traction gets an unexpected amount of traction. And sometimes the thing that you think is beautiful and super cool and looks great flops. And so you just have to keep trying. And, you know, it's, as I said, the good thing is that nothing really lives for very long in these forums. So it's okay to take a risk. And then what else can you do once you have your content up and running? How can you really, really use it, you know, to the nth degree to really maximize every blog post and you know, to take a successful post and get more mileage out of it. And so here's a sample calendar. This is a client of ours that called Friedlin. It's a rehydrated dried fruit. It's a really moist dried fruit. And we run their social media. And so this is just a little snapshot of a few days in a calendar. But we really, every month at the beginning of the month or at the end of the previous month, we start to lay out what the calendar is going to look like. And this is really important because, again, you need so much content that if you're coming up with it day in, day out, every day you wake up, oh my gosh, when am I going to post? Chances are you're going to get very tired of this. You're going to hit another hurdle where you're busy with something else unexpectedly and you can't get to your social media, and it's going to start to fall by the wayside. And that is really, you know, that's going to start gumming up the works. Those dials in your smooth running machine are going to stop turning, and that's the last thing you want to do. So if you, once you commit to something, really commit to it and plan it out and think about it and evaluate. Don't just let it sort of, you know, don't just count on it going on its own, or don't just count on your, you know, yes, I'm going to do this every day. It may not be an everyday thing, but schedule it out. And of course, you have to pay attention to the results and reply to people who comment and all of that as well. And so, you know, then what you're going to want to do is you're really going to want to evaluate what is working, what isn't working. And, you know, then you're going to start over again each month. And one thing you're going to want to look at is your Google Analytics. If you put something out that says buy now or visit us here, is it working? Google Analytics can tell you that. It can tell you, you know, how people are getting to each individual page and what's happening and what pages your visitors are looking at. And, you know, if you're on MailChimp, you'll get your stats there for open rates and click-through rates. And you're really going to want to evaluate that to figure out what you should be doing more of and what you may want to do less of. Again, you're going to want to check the responsiveness to posts. Are people liking and sharing and commenting? And then you're going to tweak and refine, create more content, schedule that content, and just keep on going. And that's my best advice, is just to kind of get started and be very clear about what your goals are, who you're talking to, where you're going to reach them, and how you're going to reach them, and then how you are going to, you know, reflect and evaluate and keep going. So that is the end of the presentation, and I'd love to hear your questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. So one of the questions we had come in is, how can we know which area of social media or tradition to reach the target group?
So again, if you have to think about your ideal client, and that's really the place to start. What demographic are they in? And based on that, you can look up. I had one slide, I'll go back to it, that showed, you know, information about what we know about users on these various platforms. And so Facebook obviously is the largest, but millennials may not be using Facebook that much, whereas older people in their 40s are on Facebook more often. So you really have to match. You have to know something about your demographic, where you can find them, what they relate to. And also, if you're selling a food product, well, Instagram is a great channel for food. So that is a place, that is one channel where you really might want to be. So you have to think about what you're selling and who you're selling to, and then that should enable you to figure out the right channel for what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. Another question is about one of the examples you gave, and it's why do you want your newsletter to have a link that drives them to your website?
Sure. Well, I want people to learn more about what I'm doing, right? I want them to learn about my company. I want them to consider hiring me. Um, so I do. So for me, one of the challenges I faced was, you can go online and find a bazillion people writing 5 tips related to marketing or content strategy. And I didn't really want to kind of reinvent that wheel. I thought it would be better to do something novel. And as Maggie stated, I'm a journalist by background. So one of the things I really love to do is to get to know people and, find out all about them and what they're doing and their businesses. And so I decided to sort of marry my interests and also my goals. And my blog is a Q&A with small business owners. And since small business owners are my target client, this is a way for me to meet my target audience, find out what their issues are, and also to kind of give them a bit of free PR. But I also have an interest in people learning about my company and sharing my name with other people. And so it was really important for me. That's one thing that I want to get out of the newsletter is that people will go back and maybe learn a little bit more about me or sign up for the newsletter, which they can do on my website. So that's why, and you'll want to think about that too. You don't want you don't want any one point, well, at some point it's going to end, but you want the chain to kind of feed itself. So when you do X, what do you want the outcome from X to be? And that's what you want to think about.
Okay, thanks. The next question here is, how do you figure out your voice?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, read, read a lot of figure out who your audience is, and when you know who your audience is, um, think about what they read, and then kind of read those places too. Go to those publications or blogs and see how people in those spaces talk. You'll notice some similar things. Obviously, you want to establish your own unique. You want to be unique as you can, but you don't want to. It's like a fine line between. You don't want to be out there, so you don't. You kind of want to sound like you're part of that community too. And that, if you'll notice, whatever demographic you're in, you kind of speak like your friends, probably, if they're in the same demographic, because we tend to use the same, verbiage and colloquialisms as our peer group. And and the same is going to be true when you write. When you're writing to your audience, you're going to want to sound like them. You're going to want to be a part of that group. So that's one way to think about it.
Okay, thank you. And the next question here is, how do I go about determining who my ideal client is?
Um, so you need to think about what it is you're selling. And when you started your business, who did you think was coming through the door? If you have a bit of a track record already, um, you might have a really strong sense of your ideal client, and maybe it's a little bit different than the person you thought about at the very beginning when you were starting off. So, who is your best client? If you landed a client tomorrow, who would you want that person to be, or a customer? If a customer is coming through your door, who do you want that next customer to be? What do they look like? And not physically down to hair color necessarily, but what is their sort of what characterizes them? What demographic are they in? Um, and if you're a service business or whatever, if you've had one or two clients or more that are really like the perfect client, what makes them perfect? And can you start to draw out, a, a picture of who that person is? So that's a way to start thinking about it. Another thing to do, and I'll make this quick, but another thing to do is to think about the competitors and who are they selling to and who would you imagine buying from them. So you can start even just looking around at products, at advertisements, and you'll start to think about who are they talking to. I mean, I always use the example of McDonald's when they came up with their tagline, "I'm loving it," and they put the apostrophe at the end of "lovin'," instead of making it really be grammatically correct. There was a certain casualness to it, and it was colloquial, and it was a way of speaking to a younger audience. So start pay attention to ads, and you'll start to learn a lot.
Okay, great. And the next question is, we've never been able to set up a content calendar in advance and end up doing things in the moment. What should we do to help us plan our calendar in advance?
Um, well, I would love to know why you can't do it in advance. What's going on? Um, Sometimes people can't do things in advance because they're just overwhelmed. So you need to figure out a solution to overwhelm. Sometimes people can't do it in advance because this is just about the worst thing that they can think of to do with their time is create content. And that's okay also because not everyone's a born writer, not everyone loves social media, not everyone feels comfortable on every platform. God knows, I don't do my own accounting because I'm not an accountant and I'm really not good with that stuff. So everybody, when you're running a business, we all feel like we all need to be all things to all people, but you need to also be honest about why am I not doing this? What is the hurdle? And then how am I going to address that hurdle? So if it's, you're just totally overwhelmed and you can't eke out another minute for this, well, maybe you need to get some more help to run your business. If you hate doing content, nothing in the world is going to make you like it, probably. If you see nothing about it appeals to you, but you really feel you need to do it, then you need to think about a solution for that. So it's more about the why than I don't really have any easy answers. The things that we aren't doing is often because we don't want to do them or that we just don't have the time. So I would suggest starting there.
Okay, thanks. Another question is, I've tried to make my social media channels interactive and get people to comment, reply, share, etc. But what can I do if no one really interacts? Will it look bad to new users if my social media channels are one-sided?
Um, so you need to think about what's going on. When you say all of this, it makes me wonder. Well, do you have enough of an audience? Part of it is just the size of your audience. If you've got 100,000 people who like your product on Facebook, you're going to have a higher rate of interest in your posts. If you have 50 people, it's going to be harder to generate, 5 comments and 3 shares. It's not going to really happen so you amass a sizable audience. And if you're not, you're having trouble amassing a sizable audience, then I might think about, well, what am I putting out there and why isn't it attracting people? Or am I talking to the wrong people? Again, if you're on the wrong channel and your people just aren't there, then if you want to meet 20 somethings, don't go to a party for 60-year-olds. I mean, it's just sort of like, where do I need to be to meet the people I want to meet? And that you need to think about. And lastly, I would say one of the big mistakes that people make on social media is that they're always in sales mode. And if you've ever been at a networking event, you know the people who are just only interested in selling. And if you think about it, you're probably not so interested in having a conversation with them because they're just thinking about themselves. Social media is about socializing, it's about creating community. And it's okay to sell, that's what you're sort of there for. But you also have to think about what else can I do to kind of just engage people. And so it takes a certain flair for just understanding how to socialize virtually. So I would say reevaluate your content and start there.
Okay. And we had a question come in through chat about demographics. So can you just talk a little bit about how you would find out more information um, about demographics?
So again, if you're starting off a business and you haven't even built it yet, but you're just thinking I'm going to do X, I would do as much research as I could into that sector. You can go to a business library and uncover a tremendous amount of information about how much people are spending on whatever good or service you're offering, who makes those decisions, all that kind of information. Where do they shop? How do they shop? You can really uncover a lot at a business library. And that will help you to start to piece together a sense of who you're talking to. Now, when you start out early days, all you can really do is dig in as much as you can, and then some of it is just then you have to try things and you have to see. So things could be a little bit different as you start to sell. And then as you start to sell, again, really think about who is, I have a track record, I've hit a certain benchmark, I've made a certain number of deals, or I've sold a certain number of goods, and you start to have a sense of who that customer is. Again, if somebody walked through the door the next day, who would you to buy your product? Who would you want it to be? And think about their demographics. Think about their age. Think about their income, their profession. You can start to really draw out a profile. And that's what I would suggest you do. And again, even if you're in your business a long time and you're just looking to grow it more, go to the business library. Maybe you can uncover some information about buying patterns, um, or even pricing. If you're a luxury good, high end, then again you're going to want to think about where to go to sell that product, um, and you're going to want to dig into matching that ideal client demographic with the right place, the right avenue for selling.
All right. And the next question here is, how does a professional female athlete use this to develop her brand without having to pay a PR firm to handle her postings?
How does a professional? Um, well, I don't really know. I don't think it's any different, for a professional female athlete, although maybe this professional female athlete is already well known to people. So, you could do it yourself if you feel you have the time. Again, I don't know what you're selling, so it's a little hard for me with just that information to give you ideas. But, are you a professional female soccer player who has already a lot of recognition because you played in the World Cup, or are you a professional female curler and nobody really knows, what curling is in America, and now you're trying to sell in America? So this professional female athlete sort of needs to know, does she already have an audience? And if so, then you're just going to have to put the time in. It's a question of time and money. You either have to pay for it or you have to do it yourself, and there's really no workaround around that.
Oh, okay. And we just got some follow up. It's about selling herself to get exposure, a basketball player in the WNBA.
Selling yourself to get exposure. Okay, that's fun. Oh, I'd love to know who you are. Okay, so you're selling yourself to get exposure. People already know you. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to presume that you've got teammates, and you've got a wider circle of trainers and coaches, and maybe fan base in your city. Um, and so you can sort of start to connect that way. Who else is active on social media who knows you? Start digging in and use it, in a very personal way. I don't know which medium you intend to be on, but look for other people um, who you already start to know, and then build the base out that way. And again, maybe I don't know exactly what you're trying to sell, or if you're building your personal brand, you might want to offer, basketball tips. Um, so, maybe are you trying to just let people know, what you're doing, and um, how, you can offer a lot of things about physical fitness and basketball and nutrition, and you might want to put your tips out there, and you could schedule it so that every Monday you've got, there's something, a hashtag, Monday motivation, that you could kind of latch on to, and you could put out your own motivation, like what gets you psyched, even to hit the gym, even when you're a little bit depleted or really not in the mood for it. How do you pump yourself up? People will trust you because you're a professional athlete. So things like that are something that you really can offer people, and they're going to listen to you. So I would put out what you know, and if you think about your friends, what do you connect over? Well, you're going to connect over the same things on social media. You just have to do it in a different kind of venue, in a virtual venue.
Okay. And I want to let everyone know that we'll send out Jennifer's contact information in a follow up email. So if you're interested in reaching out, you can do that. And do you have time for one last question, Jennifer?
Sure.
Okay. It's when you start writing for your website, does it make sense to provide users with additional resources outside your website?
That's a great question. And I remember once that I um, read an article in the New York Times, and it was a guy who sold swimming pools, actually. And he said the best thing he ever did was to give away as much information as he could, because people say they want to hide their trade secret. And all right, you might not want to give away the ingredients of your secret sauce, but by being open and friendly and offering a lot of information to people, people like that, right? We all like people who help us. And being generous without sacrificing yourself. You don't want to put yourself on the altar there, but you do want to be generous. And I think that kind of generosity builds a lot of goodwill, and people trust you and see you as somebody who's not just in it for yourself, and who, somebody who's also helpful and willing to give. So, I don't know where that line exactly falls for you, but I definitely think that sharing other resources that you think are helpful. I mean, it doesn't hurt me at all to tell people about Canva. I don't compete with Canva, but when I tell people about it, people are so excited. And so I think people then think, okay, well, Jen has good resources, and that's a good use of my time to promote myself also, that I'm somebody who's willing to tell people where they can go for other things. So that's my own personal philosophy, but I think it generally works. So I would say yes.
Okay. And do you have time for another question that just came in?
I can stay on the phone for another 10 minutes with all of
Okay. Okay, great. Here's the last question. I think the last question. Should B2Bs for small businesses create content that appeals to the managers of the business they seek, like schools or preschools, or their clients, such as parents?
I would say that's a really good question. And I would say that you should be thinking about the buyer, of your goods and services. So you, and maybe that 75% of the time, and maybe 25 or 75% of your content is geared towards the buyer, and maybe 25% is geared towards the market. So if so you don't want to discount entirely the parents, because the parents might go to the school also and say, hey, I got some really good tips, or the parent could be on the PTA. So you don't want to discount them entirely, but you do also really want to keep in mind who the decision maker is, and you want to appeal to decision makers, because at the end of the day, decision makers are going to be really important. And I would even take that one step further, and I would say, who is not only a decision maker, but who's a potential referrer? So you can go knocking on every school door and that will take you forever. Or you can go to, I don't know who it would be, but somebody who knows every school in, every school in your area or whatever it is. And that person is your referrer. And referrers are great people to connect with because they can do the selling for you. So maybe I would break it down again, 25% is geared towards the referrer, 50% towards the schools themselves, and another 25% towards the parents. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's a way to start breaking down the content. And then when you're mapping out your plan, you want your plan to reflect that. So what content you're going to put out that is really speaking to each one of those groups.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Jen, for a really great presentation. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today and asked questions. We hope you'll join us again for future webinars. Thank you for taking the time to answer all of our questions. And thank you again so much, Jen. It was really great.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.